have to be creative. It's like it forces you to have to be into it a little bit more than just create the song again. You know, the same way you've said it thousands of other times. You know.
So you talked about being a creator, right? I mean, you're creating a music that is now, what would you call it, a hybrid of like, you know, your Yiddishkeit, your Judaism, and a modern-ish version of rap or hip-hop. I mean, how would you categorize your style?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I like definition alternative hip-hop, because alternative hip-hop essentially is hip-hop as the core, like, of the song, but you're implementing different sounds and different genres, and you're trying to create something completely unique that doesn't have to be defined by any genre and any lane. But as a hip-hop artist, you know, there's rap, there's singing, there's things like of that nature, and there's a tone that might sound more hip-hop like. So I think alternative hip-hop is where it's at, or alternative rap, or in some songs in the future you'll hear like rap rock, you know, type of and reggae. You know, there's reggae like the Bob Marley song, Julian
for
Marley.
sure. You did a collab right now with Julian Marley, right?
Yeah,
called like one of the songs "Say."
Yeah,
right. Like that was pretty cool, man. That was one of the first songs I heard from you.
Thank you.
Like you have a distinct presence, like a distinct voice, but your music's got a lot of spirituality to it, obviously. Right? But you didn't grow up being religious, right?
I didn't grow up religious. I grew up Jewish. Both my parents Jewish, but you know, conservative Jewish in South Florida. Which
were you born in South Florida?
Yeah, born and raised in South Florida.
So you're a reverse transplant. Most people I talk to are like coming from somewhere to South Florida, Florida specific, and you went the other way around. But as we were talking outside, you're thinking of making your pilgrimage back.
Yeah, I miss it.
You miss it? You miss the heat?
I miss the heat. I don't know. So, you know, family, so many loved ones, you know, that you spent a large part of your life with. You know, it's hard to be gone for as long as I've been. So, you know, definitely something I hope.
So where do you live now?
In New Jersey.
New Jersey?
Yeah.
Why'd you move there?
So initially, you know, after college, the goal was to spend some time in the yeshiva. Not some, a decent amount of time. And I would already, throughout college, like I took, you know, some time at some points of college that I went to other yeshivas, and after college went to yeshivas. And I was here in yeshiva in South Florida for a little bit after school. And then the goal was to go to Morristown, where the Rabbinical College of America, where, you know, I had a lot of great experiences already there, and it was somewhere where I was really inspired to learn. And yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like, as a Baal Tshuva, someone who didn't grow up religious, it's kind of like something that you do, where you go to a spiritual habitation like a yeshiva, you sit and learn, and try not to be as involved in the world, so that you could take all that spirituality and then bring it into the world.
What do you mean try to be as involved in the world?
So yeshiva it's supposed to be like a spiritual habitat. So part of spiritual habitat, and if you're, I mean, as you get older, you're part of the working world, and you can't necessarily, you know, you don't have always the luxury to do this, but when you're a young kid, especially, you know, people that grow up religious do this. They're for 20 years, you know, but you sit and study Torah, and you don't get involved in as much of your business stuff or all the other things. And before I already had a business that was, you know, flourishing. So it was a really difficult choice, but it was something that I felt I had to do, like, now or never. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I mean, you just sit, study Torah, you go to classes, you learn from rabbis, you learn with a study partner, and try to spend most of your day just delving into spiritual learning.
So you disconnect from, you know, quote unquote, the world, and completely immerse yourself into God and to learning, and that's what you fill your days with. That's
yeah. It's life changing. It changes the person. Changed me, and it's also something that's like it's out of this world. Like nothing you can really find. You can't really find these types of experiences so readily accessible. You have to kind of create them on your own. So like it's like once you leave yeshiva, you kind of always have this drive to go back and just do that again, because it's like very unique.
Wow, I've never heard anyone explain that to them. I know quite a few people that have been to yeshiva and went on to be rabbis, but most of them, if not all of them, were born into it.
That's different too.
Yeah, and then so they kind of didn't have a choice. That was the lifestyle that they knew, and the only lifestyle that they were going to accept, or else they would be considered outcast and maybe shunned or disowned completely. You went the other way around, which is from, even though I would consider myself a conservative, like you said your family was, it is a major change that you have to take on. Like everything changes. How did your family accept that, or not accept it, or like did they move alongside you?
Get different reactions from different people. For the most part, my family was very accepting. It doesn't mean there was no challenges. There's definitely a lot of challenges and a lot of concern from family members. Like what are you doing? And also because I was making these changes at such a young age, it was like.
How old were you?
So I consider all these things having started from the time I was 16. But like really. Probably more when I was like more getting involved Jewishly, probably around 18. Maybe 19. More, as the years grew on, I would get more and more deeply involved in it.
So you make these massive changes. You make this lifestyle change. Now, growing up, I'm assuming I'm going to make an assumption. You stop me if I'm wrong, but the type of music that you're creating was probably from the type of music that you grew up listening to, right?
I was so it was a huge struggle for me to find things that I connected to at first, because I didn't know a lot of Jewish music. And the things that I was inspired by at the time, because I was making music before, I was making things in the hip hop space, and it was definitely at that point in time fully inspired by what I, grown up listening to.
What did you grow up listening to?
So, I mean, it's a lot of rap, but also at different points in my life, I got inspired by different genres. And, I had a moment where I delved mainly into like 70s music and 80s music, and, sometimes a little bit earlier. And, I was inspired by anything that I thought was inspiring or cool in my eyes, when I was younger. But rap and hip hop and R&B, those were like the majority of what I listened to growing up, honestly. And I mean, ultimately, rap and hip hop is like the majority of the world. It's like the main genre in the world, like amongst the youth these days. And it takes up, most people's, music influence. For me, it was very heavily.
Now, but you've now taken that genre and amalgamated it. You created your own space, kind of. There were some trailblazers. We were talking about Matisiao earlier, and you said you had performed with him in Miami. I'm so upset that I missed that. You got to text me next time you're coming back down for this, because I'd love to see you guys do a collab. But you're coming out with like an alternative rap where you've got your mainstays of hip hop and R&B and rap, and now you're adding your spiritual spin to it. Like every song I've heard from you has spirituality like deeply embedded in that. Did you find that when you became religious, that kind of propelled your creativity towards your craft?
Yeah, I mean, all the things I was delving into were super deep life questions and life things that we all go through and wonder about. And to really be addressing that at that age with the optimism of a young kid that like sees the world as his oyster, or I guess that's not kosher. Or,
it's a metaphor. I got you. You're not eating it. You just
can't eat all the world because it's an oyster. But you know, I had that optimism of I could do anything in the world, and also at the same token, I was going really deep into my deepest life questions and concerns and trying to find answers. And also on a very spiritual path, I felt with Hashem, with God. And that opened up a lot more creativity. There's so much in, spirituality, definitely Jewish spirituality and mysticism. And, unfortunately, a lot of people don't delve into these parts of the Torah that do study Torah, and nowadays it's a fad too, actually, in some areas. But the mystical aspects of the Torah, Hasidus, it talks on every single aspect of life. So things that I had probably a superficial understanding of, or even maybe more mature than people my age because I was delving into them, it brought it out way more thoroughly for me. And you're hearing wisdom from people that have lived thousands of years versus, people that live tens or maybe 100 at best. And all combined into, one teaching and, one thought process. And you hear all the different things. And, like Shlomo Melech says, King Solomon, there's nothing new under the sun. In some way, all aspects of life have the same questions and the same concerns and the same things to be tapping into. It's just we develop more and more over time, the different experiences of it and the different understandings of it. So wrapping my head around these things, it brought a lot of creativity musically and, writing wise, and probably have books of writings that, I haven't turned into songs, or, songs that I've made that I never, even recorded, that were all part of this process. And being that music and writing were like part of my diary, it was like, to be combining it all, it was definitely a big part of my creativity in music, because it was my life ultimately.
Do you tie in everything that you're writing back to how it would resonate with your studies, your rabbinical studies, with your Shiva studies? Like, do you look at things and say, is this a message that I want to send out vis-a-vis Judaism? Or is it just like, I'm writing this because this is how it's coming out of my head?
It's a good question. I like starting songs with the melodies.
Okay.
So I just feel that every melody, whether it's one that I should be involving myself into or not personally, like whether it's something I vibe with or not. I mean, I feel like you could find it in anything, and I could vibe with something in almost anything. But if you really spend time on it, but every melody has a story. And I feel as an artist, and what artists, the best of them do is bring out that story that's already there, and in their own language.
Right. So you don't question it. You make it happen. You put it down. You start with the melody, and then you fill in the blanks after.
Yeah. There's times where I say, could I have done this better? Could I have gone somewhere else with this? A lot of times I don't necessarily go back and redo everything. And I just, as long as I think that this is what the sound should be, I'm not going to go redo it, because if anything, I'll find another song that I want to make. And I'm not super attached to the melodies usually. I love, like, if I love something and I know this is like a really good song, then I will be. But most of the time, it's just like, this is what I connect to right now and I feel, and I want to create something too.
So you're a trailblazer. Like, I mean, I can only, we were talking about this, but like there's very few people that have tied in, especially religious Judaism and hip hop. I mean, and R&B and rap, like that genre, it almost seems like it's an oxymoron. It clashes in so many ways just because of how hard hitting, and when you think of like original gangster rap and the father of that music, and where it came from, it's like it literally came out of the streets, right? It came from people finding a platform to talk about what their version of the real world was, and then they brought it out there in the form of music, and it really like took off. It was like, it's incredible what it's also morphed into and created. And then you have the spiritual end of things, which is, I don't want to say soft, because it's not, but the messaging is clearly very, very, very different. And then you've amalgamated the two. What would you say to anybody who wants to come up and do things the way you're doing things? What's the biggest challenge for you to create?
In hip hop, you're saying?
Yeah.
I think, I even see this in some record executives type mentalities that people don't, even today, people still think hip hop's, only gangster rap, and it's ultimately just another form of expression of music. And people that are creating in that, they think that they need to make the expectation of what hip hop music is,
right,
or what it should sound like, or the topics. And that's completely wrong, especially if you've been paying attention to music for the last 20 years. That's not what hip hop has to be at all. It's just a form of it that is very popularized around certain minority groups, and that's been and made a mainstream thing.
Okay.
But really you don't need to be like that. You could create something very unique to you, and it doesn't have to sound a certain way. It doesn't have to be about certain things. You don't need to put on a facade, and it could be very natural and normal as your form of expression, even if you're a white Jewish kid from South Florida, Cooper City or Hollywood.
Right. So you're saying your music can be accepted by all. It's just its own form within what seems like, traditional hip hop, but you're doing it your way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just music. People make music from all types of parts of the world, from all different backgrounds. And part of what music is an expression of the soul. And if you feel that you're creating something that's not an expression of your soul, and it's something that you're putting on a facade, then you should question it and try to find out what your voice is, what your sound is. And it should be something unique, because you are unique. There's no one else like you in the world. So anyone that, will professionally display that music, it'll be heard something unique.
So I'll tell you, one of the things I really admire about your music, that I can play it for my kids and I don't have to worry that something bad is going to pop up within the language or the lyrics. Thank you. But I'll tell you that also, when you listen to music that has some spirituality, there's always the undertones that if you're really paying attention to the words, and you can really hear what the messaging is. It's not just the melody, it's not just the beat, but it's actually listening to the world, and it tells a story, right? Which is what you're trying to do while you're creating all the time, right? When you've created some new piece of music, do you have to clear it through, the rabbinical Beit Din? Do you need to have some sort of like checks and balances before you release it? I know I've heard something way back when the Matisyahu, when he was religious, he had a music video that had some females, I think, might have been in it or something like that. I think we kind of crossed the line. I wasn't sure about that. This is hearsay. I'm not speaking from my own evidence, but like, is it something that you have to clear? So
I had a lot of questions early on with a Rav, rabbinic authority. It's not just any rabbi. He's someone who could paskin on it for, which paskin, for those listening, it means like to make an actual ruling on on things on a higher level than just the basics, and music would be one of those more complicated things. And I got the answers that I needed to be able to create within that lane of like what not to do, what I'm allowed to do, what's best to do, what's more Hasidish, like more like, I don't know what the way to express Hasidish is, so that I learned from what's acceptable to what's the most religious, accepted or wanted or desired by, people that are very, very, very machmer, stringent on what they listen to. And within that lane, I try to create. And now I do have a Rav that I'm working on creating a hechsher, like kosher symbol on my music, so that people could listen that are extremely careful about whatever they listen to and know that this Rav has said that this is, just like you look for certain symbols of kashrus.
I never knew that. Wow, that you actually have to have that.
I don't need
music.
that. No, I don't need that, and no one's ever done that from what I've seen.
Okay,
but
you're going to make it?
Yeah, I'm doing it.
Wow.
I don't think I've ever seen someone in mainstream music do it. I don't know if I've seen anyone do it. I just knew that.
Well, the way I see it, it's like the inverse of the parental advisory that NWA had right on their thing, because the kids shouldn't be listening to it. You're going the other way around to make sure that this is real pure.
Yeah, I want people to feel comfortable and not question things. For the longest time, when I was doing tshuva, I was so questioning on anything. What could I listen to? What should I? What's bad? What's this? And
how did you get those answers?
Learning and rabbis that are knowledgeable on the subject, and between those two, and discussion over the different details about it. It is not something that you see necessarily always in black and white. There's certain gray areas in music, but there are clear answers. That's the point. And it takes a little bit more effort to get all the clear answers. And that's why I really want to do this where I have hechshers on my music. Because then what people usually do is, I'm not going to judge, but a lot of times it's, what have I heard from others as far as what we accept or what we like? So like, it's really not a good way to do things. Like, that's not clear cut. Halacha in general is not like that. It's not like, what are the 5 people that I know like feel about this guy's music or that guy's music? It's just not the way that it's usually done. It's halacha is this kosher or not kosher? And I want it to be very black and white, that there is a respected Rav that went through it all. I mean, I myself am a rabbi now, but a Rav that actually is very well versed in this, and, people respect for halakhic decisions, and people go to them and they say that this is good because it takes out all that guesswork and I know these people listen to them, or I know these people listen to them, or I feel more Hasidic. That's all like so vague, and it's not clear, and it's all just based off he said, she said, which is not how halacha is. So I would want to create that, and maybe it'll become a thing that people start doing.
That is the most fascinating thing I've heard. I'm serious. Like the thing about this podcast, and it's grown to like something I never even imagined, because of the people that I get to sit across the mic with. And it's almost like I get to take learning on things that I would have almost no access to or really have a reason to inquire about, and plug it into my brain vis-a-vis yours.
Yeah,
and
it's amazing.
And what you just said is like, how has nobody done this before?
If it's done like in a very, I don't know. I would say, feel like weird saying that's never been done, that someone's put a hechsher on their music. I'm sure it exists somewhere, but I've not seen it personally, and I don't think it's a common thing at all. And I think if it were,
And stop me if I'm explaining it incorrectly, but for those people who don't know what a hechsher is, it's like when you're looking for something like kosher to buy, there's a symbol on it that says this is safe to eat if you keep kosher. It's almost like when you're watching a movie, there's G, PG, R rating, you know, there's all those ratings that tell you what to expect before you set foot in there. But what you're saying is you want to create that for kosher music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I think it would be a real useful thing for the Jewish world, especially, and people that are becoming more affiliated in their Judaism to feel more comfortable on what they're choosing, just like they know, oh, this has a symbol. So I know my rabbi said this symbol is good, so I'm going to use it.
I'll take that even further. I think that application resonates with not just Judaism. I think it's across the board of people that are listening to more spiritual music that want to be able to get a cleaner version of it, probably, that has the undertones that they know that they're going to get without having to worry about what that artist produced. So there's no real vagaries. This is what I'm going to expect when I'm going to tune into this, because the absorption of music is storytelling with a rhyme. So when you're listening to it, like, how do you get kids to learn things? Most of it is vis-a-vis having a tune to something that you want them to learn because it's catchy. It stays in their head, right? That's how you get it. And if you know that there is this is the benchmark, this is the litmus test for what the music's going to sound like. And I'm still amazed, first of all, at the fact that you're brilliant, that you're doing this and that it hasn't been done before. It is absolutely the coolest thing ever. I'm going to tell everybody. When do you expect that this may come to fruition?
So I'm working on that. Hopefully, as many of my next songs, maybe the song Yellow that I have coming out, I don't know if we'll be able to.
When is that coming out?
It should be in this month.
Yeah. Is that a collaboration or is that a solo?
It's a solo.
And where is it going to come out?
You'll see it everywhere. I mean, I'm most active on Instagram for sharing all my stuff. But yeah, I say in general, people look for Spotify for my music because that's where everything's going to be. It's not necessarily going to be everywhere else. And, usually when you find something on YouTube, I only have one really official release on YouTube. Mm. So whatever people find on YouTube is just like, oh, I found it here. And it's not like the real habitat for the song. So I'd say Spotify.
So why are you releasing one at a time?
So it used to be the way to focus on albums really early and whatnot. Today, the way to start the early stages of, music is one at a time, because at each song you're building more and more momentum. Different people connect with different songs. Some people might not like this, or
sure,
hopefully no one doesn't like it, but some people connect more with other songs than others.
I don't think when it comes to artists that people don't like it. I think they just, when they, let's say, get an album, there's some songs they like more than others. That's it. Yeah. They like the artist. They just, some things speak to them in a different way.
Yeah, that makes sense for me. When I think about artists that I like, it's not that I didn't like certain songs. It's that I really like this one.
Right.
Like this. If I like the artist, I'm listening. If I don't like the artist, I'm not listening to anything, so.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, that makes a lot more sense to me. I guess being less focused on being the consumer, I don't think in that realm these days. But yeah, so I mean, the one song at a time is the way right now. Every music, most music people that you speak to, like the business side, will tell you that there is truth to having albums, and that being a very huge thing for an artist, that it's a body of work that people can connect to and understand you as a person. It's just not the way to build unless you're really putting a lot of emphasis into this one album, and you already have some form of traction.
So you've been creating music since you were a young kid. I mean, since even before you became religious. What about the music industry would you say has changed from when you started creating to about now?
I think back in the day, the world had one, not Jewish and non-Jewish music, just obviously more mainstream focus. The world had one channel to understand the entire world outside of their home and their school. It was a TV. That was the only thing people looked to. If you were on TV, you made it. If you weren't on TV, you didn't make it. Mm-hmm. now we have podcasts, cell phones that have every different thing in the world coming to them, visually, audio, written, could be anything. And TV is much less significant in that world.
Sure.
And therefore, in music, you could be not the 10 people signed that are being focused on by this one record label that all are going to be the biggest stars for the next 10 years. And, net 10 more at this label. And it's just all based off these major labels and who they pick, and completely based off talent too. Like back in the day, it was completely based off talent, whereas today it's not.
What do you mean? Elaborate on that.
Today, it's not about talent. It's about everything else and the talent. Like, you obviously have to be creating something that people like and they want to listen to, because you can't, if people don't want to listen, then you can't work with that.
That's right.
But
what would you categorize as the everything else?
Yeah, I mean, it's building a community. It's the way people understand you and your story, whether they connect to that. It's the experience as a listener and a person that views you. It's the storytelling outside of just your story, but the way that it's conveyed to the world.
What is it that you want that message for you to be? What is it that you're trying to put out there?
On one end, there's a famous story where these students, rabbinical students, came back from, I believe it was Toluca, which is like on certain holidays, we would go out and go to different communities, sometimes walk 4 hours to get somewhere and speak to that community and walk back. And, or it could be, wrapping tefillin on certain people or whatever, depending on the day, if it was like a certain type of holiday. For that was like, that would be for something else. But they basically said they didn't find any Jews, where they went, and they were very upset. And they spoke to the rabbi about it, and he basically had said that just the fact that they saw you had an impact, because you're people that are trying to do what God wants in life, basically. And you represent that in everything, the from the tzitzis, the hat, the beard, the yarmulke, the jacket, and just the fact that they see you has some form of an impression. And wherever you went, God guided you. It was not for nothing. So on one end, I just feel that being a person that's really in tune with my mission with God and what I'm here to do, and has changed my whole life to do it, I hope that in some way it just impacts people regardless of anything else. As far as what my message is, or I think ultimately the main message is that we all have our own journey, and we all have our own mission in life. We have our souls here for a reason. And to be in tune with that versus what the world can often bring us away from is being in tune with that, because there's so many conflicting ideas, conflicting values, and things of importance that our surroundings put on us, that it sometimes conflicts us and makes us drift away from our true mission and calling in life. So I just hope that by doing that myself in my life, because music is definitely a part of that for me, that will impact others to do that for themselves. And I think that ultimate, it's a very Jewish idea that ultimately, if everyone's in tune with their souls, that's a ideal reality, that builds the ideal type of world that it was intended to be. So by doing it myself and trying to inspire others in their own journeys and telling my stories about my own ups and downs of life and things that I deal with and go through, it'll help people with theirs.
I often say this, and I know in some ways to some people it may sound cliche, is that everything happens for a reason, right? I don't believe in coincidences. I haven't for a very, very long time. I'm by no means a religious person. I do put on tefillin every day.
I'm not religious either, by the way.
No, you're not? So what separates between you and I? Like, if I'm not religious, you're not religious, then who's religious?
I say that in one end, in two ways. One, that people box in the idea of religiosity and religion in a certain box. And it's about doing a bunch of things by rote and just like following these rituals that, God said you to do or whatever. And it's just all cold and there's nothing really to it. I'd like to see myself as spiritual or observant. And I think that what God wants me to do is not a very religious thing. It's just that the way that it's expressed to the world. And we've come to define things, everything within its box of religion. So Judaism automatically falls into a religion. So we see it in that lens. This is what they do. This is what they do. They wear this. These people wear this. Mm-hmm. That's not what I'm doing. I mean, that just happens to be part of it.
Let me try to see if I can understand what you said. I think that to you, you do things with intention. There are rituals and things that you do on a regular basis that are specific to certain religions, right? Jews do things different than other religions. But what you seems to me you're saying is that you're doing it with intent. That's not a religious thing. It's not a set of rote rules that you do just because you're religious now, therefore you have to do it. You're doing it because you have meaning and intent behind the things that you're doing. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, in a sense, this is my purpose and this is part of my mission in life. As a Jewish soul, these are things that a Jewish soul, God wants us to do. Okay, about some of the external things, some of those are customs and they're not necessarily like as it's a different lens of why we do, how we do it. But ultimately, the things that we do as Jews are things that God wants us to do. I mean, and it's not necessarily just also black and white, even though we're dressed in black and white.
Look, I don't think there's anyone that I will never meet, and maybe on this planet that might be able to answer this, and I'd really like to know your perspective on it.
Sounds like a hard thing.
It might be. It might be. So Matisiau was religious. You know, he was devout, like yourself. Went down a path.
He's still religious.
Is he? Okay. But is no longer
in a revealed way. You're saying, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't have a long beard. He doesn't have tzitzis. He's not wearing the same way. I don't know what else he's doing, so I can make no assumptions. I have no intention. Was it the music that pushed him out, or changed his perspective? I don't say pushed him out, or was it the rabbinical hierarchy that said, "Look, you can't do this if you want to be like this"? I mean, do you even know the answer to that, or do you
in
have
general?
speculation?
I don't want to speculate on someone else's journey. So I don't know. It's his journey. I do see from an outsider perspective how, first of all, he was trailblazing 10 plus years as the talking head for Judaism and the
sure.
He was, when you thought of Judaism, he was the representative in the mainstream world.
Right. Absolutely.
We didn't know of other things. He was the most famous Jew at that time in the world.
And he was doing things like beatboxing and creating all kinds of...
Yeah, religious Jew. Yeah, there's definitely Jews all over the world that were... So I think that to be doing that in music is very difficult as a religious person. One.
Why?
It could be because of the religious world, and it could be because of the non-religious world. So in the religious world, the difficulty there is you are now the person being talked about and scrutinized by people that are very devout and very, set in a certain way of that, how things are supposed to be done. And if you are kind of changing that or doing things as beyond that, you get a lot of scrutiny, and it's very difficult, especially wherever you go, especially as being that person, being brought to every Jewish community in the world. And you get people that are sometimes you get people that are very loud that are saying things to you that.
What would they be saying?
It could be disagreements on how they are. It could be people saying to their students, don't listen to that person's music, which is, for someone that's trailblazing the Jewish path. And, that could be difficult. Or, trying to, if you see students especially drifting at someone because they're a symbol in the world, and, people that are big in the world for music or whatever it may be, the youth often learns a lot from them. Sometimes I don't know if the word learn a lot from them, but sometimes could try to emulate, and sometimes not the best things that are emulated. Like if the person wore a funny hat or something, they might go to their class wearing a funny hat where that's not acceptable in the religious world, or certain things like that, where rabbis could be saying, this person is not teaching in my yeshiva or whatever, and he's influencing my students so greatly that I'm afraid of it. And I might lash out at him and say bad things about him, or be overly scrutinizing of him, so that other people and other of these students will become more like that instead of seeing him in such a positive light. And imagine that happening in different ways, in different forms: mom, son, dad, daughter, different ways, all throughout the religious world. It's a lot. And, it could be very critical. It could be very difficult as the person that's being criticized. And it could wear on a person, especially when they change their entire life and they're extremely devout and they are extremely doing things at a very high level spiritually, and probably more devout than a lot of the other people that are speaking about them. And maybe they didn't do this thing the right way, or they didn't do that the right way. They said this and they didn't like that, which a human is not perfect most of the time. And that's possible. So it's hard to be under that radar. And I think I've seen people more forgiving over the time with different artists in different ways, because starting to see so many different people within the Jewish world being, okay, this one's more like this and it's more like that. And it becomes more and more normal. There's definitely still work to be done there. And I think anyone trailing that path would struggle a lot with their Judaism, because it takes a lot out of it when you're the talking head, you're the vocal point of criticism. And then a non-Jewish world, you are exposed to all the struggles and temptations of being a rock star. That's what he was, so you have all these things going on at once. And, in general, when you're touring, it's very lonely. I'm not saying for him, this is what happened. I'm just saying that it's a hard path to be on for anyone that would be doing something similar. And especially at the level that he was doing it for 10 years plus, and literally changing the Jewish world in a positive way and bringing tons of people closer to their neshamas in many ways. Kudos for him, for what he did, regardless of how people feel about where he took it. It's his journey.
I don't think anyone could explain that better than you would, because it's very detailed and very articulate, because you can understand what it's like having, first of all, transition from one life to another almost, right? And being a creator that creates music that is comparable and similar. And it's, without him, there's probably never going to be a you. And without the other artists that you grew up listening to, there would have never been your genre. When you collaborate with other artists, is it important to you that your undertones and theirs kind of meet, or is it just, let's create beautiful music and then see how it happens?
So I've become more and more like aware that it has to be fitting,
Mm.
and that it's best when it's fitting. You know, but I'm a creative, and I like to see how things that are not always so black and white fitting could be fit together. I like contrasts, and I like how things could be completely one way and completely the other, and they can combine in a certain way. And I like finding the middle ground. And I find as humans, we all have different things we could connect on, and I enjoy that. But I do see the value in that. There's a fitting connection here. There's a fitting connection there. I'm also just more likely to find the fitting connections in things that are not normal. And there's certain artists that I've thought about working with that I do see like, I don't know if that's the right.
How do you guys connect? Like, I mean, actually, physically, like, how do you connect? Do you use your studios? Do you use your labels to reach out to one another, publicists?
Could be all those things. Could be at a show. It could be people know each other and trying to make it happen. I've had people just saying, "Oh, you need to make a song with so and so," and then trying to bring us together. It could just be through social media. It could be that they heard a song of mine and they really like it, and they, followed me and they're reaching out or something.
Have you encountered any anti-Semitism, performing or in your music or just like online social media?
Guess it depends how you define anti-Semitism.
I think it's pretty clear cut. It's either it is or it isn't. At least in my opinion.
No, for a lot of things I would say, like I've always said for the longest time, that as I became more and more religious, although I might have been thoughtful of like probably going to get anti-Semitism, I've gotten tons more respect from people that are not even Jewish, just saying like, wow, what are those strings? Like, what do they mean? Like, it's so inspiring to see you walk around like fully like believing who you are, and you look proud as who you are. Things like that is more common for me than the anti-Semitism.
It's a great angle. Well, no, that's good. Like, I'm not looking for venom. I'm not looking for hate.
I'm just saying that like it's
because you are a public figure, right? You're out there more. Your music's out there more, which means the more scrutiny that you're going to be under for both on both sides of your world.
Yeah. So as I've become more known, that also brings another element, and that. I'd say is someone writing "Free Palestine" on your posts sometimes? Like, is that?
I don't think that's trolling.
I don't think that's anti-Semitism. I think every Jew gets that at some regard. And then, which is ridiculous, by the way, for those doing that, you guys should stop. And then, as far as like anti-Semitism, I would say sometimes I'd get it more from people of our own faith that like are super like uncomfortable with their religious feelings. I don't more than I got it from non-Jews. No offense to those people, but I think like it's just harder for us as Jews to like see someone really believing in something that we necessarily like didn't hold ourselves to, and just like sometimes it gets to people because they feel like there's something there, they connect to it, they're also Jewish. I don't know all the details of why, but it's just something more irksome because it touches home more. And as far as non-Jews, it's like very few and far between. And, usually when I do get it, it's not like blatantly, you don't, anti-Semitism has existed. It's just not always right in your face, and it became more in your face when people started saying, like, whatever they're saying, the nonsense they've been saying the past few years.
Right now, anti-Semitism is, I used to call it veiled under the Palestinian cause. Now it's not veiled anymore.
Yeah, people are more free about it because, like, Kanye West said some crazy stuff. So now what could I say that's so bad? Right. So, like, that's part of it. And then, and just that it doesn't always come out in those ways. It's like, it could be very subtle things that you're experiencing from people, and rudeness or trying to mess up things for you or whatever, which is all coming from a certain anti-Semitism. But, I mean, I've definitely felt it. It's just not always from people that are non-Jewish. Sometimes it's from our own people. And as far as like, if anything, I'd say as I became more from, and look, this is very few. I'm not saying it's common. It's very not common for me.
We always look at like, we'll meet 1,000 great people, and the one person that irks us, or
that's all you remember.
That's the one you remember. So that's kind of how it works, right? And because that we protect ourselves from that. So I get you don't have to preface it, but I do understand what you're saying. I'm actually I didn't expect you to say it was more from Jews that you're getting that kind of vibe. Versus the other way around.
I mean, it's not common.
Doesn't mean
it's
it's
not common
factual.
at all, but it's happened, and it's just like it's coming from a good place. Usually, the people that want to say something or give you a hard time the most, they care about it the most. And who's going to care about it most than another Jew? Like, we care about what we believe, especially if we were raised a different way. It's just like, why are you involved in that when I'm not? It's like, that's the underlying question that the person asks. And it doesn't bother me. I don't really get it that much, so I haven't gotten it recently. Nothing recent.
I'll tell you, I started realizing the podcast turned into something when I was starting to get criticism.
Yeah.
Because like, I think the people that like you will listen to you for an hour. The people that hate you will listen to you for 3. So you're not getting criticized. There are not enough people that are listening to you because everybody's got an opinion.
Yeah. And then as far as like non-Jews, it's very subtle things I'm saying. Like, it's not right in my face. It's more subtleties.
Outside of music, or is that what consumes your life? What else is it that you do? Like, do you? I know you're an entrepreneur. You've created some incredible companies, but like, where do you find the time, and what are you working on now?
Outside of music, I mean, I have, things that I do business-wise. I have my own companies, and, just probably 1 or 2 of them is really the focus now, just because I want to really take things as far as I can musically, and things have taken off, thank God, very well.
Incredible.
And I would just want to like push as far as it could go.
Like, for those of you that have not heard your music yet, and the ones that are listening here are for sure all going to sample it and will get addicted to
God
it.
willing.
And I can tell you it's kids friendly, and trust me, you want to play it in the car. You'll fall in love with it.
Thank you.
It really is amazing. But what are the companies that you're now focusing on, or are you like in the process of kind of just working on music alone?
So I'm trying to keep like a close knit clientele of like people that they could build with me what they're trying to do.
And what's the space?
It's all different spaces. People that are in tech. There's people that are in real estate. There's people that are in music. There's people that are in art.
So what specifically, what is it that you do outside of music?
So, just working with different people on building out. So if they want certain things that they want to build out for themselves in a project for their story and their things that they're trying to create a community around, helping them learn from me, and also mentoring. That's one of the things that, I opened up like a mentor program where people could apply on my Instagram.
Really? How can they find that?
It's in the link in bio. Just added. I didn't even say anything until just now publicly. Okay. But I sneaked it into the link in bio. And
what's your Instagram handle? So people
at Moshe Reuven. So MosheReuven.
All right, and I'm going to have it also on the podcast link and stuff like that. But just
so that's less hands on about like me helping them. It's more like it's less of a business. It's more like having access to speak with me and go through the things that they're trying to build out for themselves in life, and their story, their business that they want to create, and utilizing my backgrounds in startups and business, and also what I've learned through music and creating a business around my art, helping people to be able to do that, because a lot of people find that they want to create things very creatively, and there's not really like a set guidepost that they could find to do that, whereas they could go into the working world and definitely find a job that will set them in a trajectory. They want to be able to create something outside of that. And
it's funny you should say that. That's how I felt about the podcast.
Yeah. It's like what you're building. You're building something that's there's not a clear trajectory.
Mm-hmm. It's true. You're just around people. You're creating content. You want to meet cool people. You want to create good content. You get better. If I listen to my first podcast versus now, like there's a clear distinction in the learning curve, right? But there's no, like you said, there's no playbook.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like it all aligns with like what you were asking me about before about like the messaging, like wanting to help people find their own song, so to speak, and sing it to the best they can. Their own mission is like all these things that I'm willing to do outside. I like being part of someone else's journey to be able to help that come to fruition, because I feel like that's in tune with that same message.
And how do you do that? You start talking to them, and then what? You help them build out a framework, a business plan?
So for the mentorship, it's going to be mainly a certain amount of time they get to speak, and then we create programs and implementation things that they need to follow when we're not speaking. They could DM me, they could be in touch with me, I'll get them a private line. And basically each step of the way, so it could be, it's all based around the person and where they're at, but it could be that they're still at the ideation stage of like what they're doing. And that's another problem you have to tackle, is like, how do you figure out what it is that you're trying to develop? Or if they're trying to decide between different things, how they make those decisions and how they try those things out or test things. Some of it's involving like the lean startup method of like how to create something. So that could be different stages. It could be, getting out of the building, which is trying to take your product and find out what people think about this need in the marketplace and how that they could be providing better for it, or and then they could be about how to acquire the people that they want around their tribe, how to create the product the best it could be.
Is that how you build up your subscriber base on social media?
I try to see, I try to see everything. I just found that the lean startup method is a very clear-cut way to take ideas into fruition. Obviously, everything's God's bracha, whether, how well good, things go. But practically, we as people need to take an idea and implement it. And God helps us to do that along the way. And a very clear-cut way is just following processes that, the best companies in the world that started from zero follow to be able to get there. And nowadays, there's more of like a clear trajectory. So I try to apply it for myself, and
seems to be super effective.
Thank God. Yeah. So I mean, the fact that I felt that's kind of been a niche that I've been growing out, is the ability to take an idea and implement. And 0 to 1 is like the hardest journey. 1 to 3, 1 to 2 is always going to be easier than 0 to 1. So just the same way that I'm doing it with my music, I want to help other people do it with their own dreams.
I find that being religious is a full-time job.
Yeah.
That in and of itself. Not only that, people don't realize how expensive it is.
Like very expensive.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. I don't know if this was anecdotal, but I remember hearing this from one of the rabbis in Toronto. When people are going through the conversion process and they choose to live by way of halacha, they say to them, before you decide anything, go do grocery shopping at a kosher store. And if you can still afford to do it after that, then come back to us and we'll continue the process. Because people don't realize it's like whatever you're used to paying, it's usually like now it's probably 3 times more expensive than whatever retail is.
Especially in Boca over here.
Yeah, so things in Boca, that's what people don't realize. Also, how I could speak to the common thing I used to hear when we moved down here is like, well, real estate is much cheaper than Toronto. That's factual. It is cheaper. But property tax is more expensive. Insurance is more expensive. Private school is more expensive. Shopping is more expensive. Like day-to-day things, medical insurance that you don't have in Canada. Those things are more expensive on a day-to-day basis. And then coming down here is just, the journey that I've had with my wife, it's terrifying in so many ways, but so is everything that you're going to do in your life. When you believe you're going to try to move it forward, you're going to get uncomfortable and you're going to get people criticizing you, and you're just going to poke at every single one of your insecurities, and it's going to touch at how strong your foundation within your relationships are. And then we left the support network that we had to build what we're building now with my wife. And I don't want to say that I took for granted how much help we had around just raising kids. And when you have businesses that are established, you also could sometimes kind of take it for granted because, the phone's going to ring, deals will be done. But now we're here establishing almost 2 new businesses, and I can tell you that it tests everything. Baruch Hashem, my wife's business is growing leaps and bounds. Sure. She is the best at what she does in her space. It's scalable.
It's awesome.
But it's also changed my identity as a dad, because now I have to be around for my kids. I'm on the journey of hopefully establishing a REIT. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term. It's a real estate income trust, because there is a massive void and potential in affordable housing in Florida. And affordable housing itself is a coined term that is being tossed around more as a political means, because there is a clear definition for what affordable housing means, and it's a percentage of the median state income. But as someone who develops, there's just not enough incentives to actually do that sort of stuff. So I'm kind of like working within the workforce housing space, and I see tons of potential here. Like, sure, it's more than like anything I've ever seen. But like any other business, raising kids on your own, establishing businesses, it's terrifying, dude. And I'm not religious by any stretch, but I have faith. And if I didn't have faith, I wouldn't be able to do this with my wife. I hold on to something that is far beyond me that sometimes I can't explain. And sometimes I feel almost foolish holding on to, because it's not tangible. You can't quantify it, like a statement in a bank account where you've got X number of dollars and you have enough runway to feed your kids and pay for school and live your lifestyle for another couple of years, right? You have to invest. You have to redefine yourself, and it is a scary, scary thing.
Yeah. I mean, it takes faith to be on that type of a journey. It
does. And you have days where you're like, are we doing the right thing here? Like, should we have done things in a different way? I have to ask you this. You're a very mild-mannered, soft-spoken,
thank you,
calculated guy. Do you get nervous when you get on stage?
Yeah, but it always depends, on where the venue is, how the venue is, if everything's set up right, mic check. If I'm performing with people, if it's a band, if it's a backing track, but how big of a venue could I see people?
So that's it. So what size venue makes you nervous? Where?
I don't even think it's a size thing. It's just it's more the nerves are from, I don't know where the nerves, God knows where the nerves are from. But what I see for myself is, do I feel like everything's comfortable? Like there's a show where the sound was off every time you moved the mic a certain way. And there's different aspects about the sound. And even when I was on stage, I could hear the issues. And it wasn't going well with the fact that I felt nervous, because that
threw you off.
Yeah, it threw me off, there's thousands of people out there, and you want to do a good job.
Sure.
And you just know that there's a problem, and you have to live within it. And look, that's part of life. You have to, you have to be able to pivot and deal with the struggles, and that's part of how God guides you. And maybe I always think that there's a reason for all these things, and maybe I don't. The best thing for me is not to be super move around so much on this show, or maybe that's going to have more of an impact, or whatever it is. At the ultimately, it does. There are nerves, and I think every artist feels nerves It's just a matter of channeling them. So just like you're saying on the journey, like just like there's times where we feel nervous about our journey. As long as we know we're doing the right things, which is sometimes our question, which that requires a time where a person takes a step back, throughout their week or whatever to evaluate everything or whatever. But as long as we know we're doing the right things, and ultimately everything God's bringing us to, right? It says the footsteps of man are established by God. So wherever I am, I could handle it. And that maybe the nerves bring out the best in you sometimes, as long as you're able to control it to some degree.
So where's your music taking you next? Like where are we going to see you again? Are you doing anything like big for Chagim, or are you doing like?
Yeah, so right now we're booking out the rest of our nights of Hanukkah and the shows around Hanukkah, like throughout December. So I'm excited about that. I'm going to be performing at the largest menorah lighting in the world.
Where's that going to be?
In New York City.
Cool.
Which I'm excited about.
You going to be releasing your new song by then? You going to be performing that?
There'll be new songs out by then. There'll be hopefully several new songs out by then. And then also the travels that go along with performing all over the world, so December I'm hoping to be here, as long as like all the places that are in the pipeline, we have it all solidified that going to this country this day or this country that.
Are there places that you never thought would be booking you that you're going to?
So, I mean, the one place that I haven't visited that I really want to, and I keep getting people reaching out to me trying to bring me to, is London. And it's like one of the places I've always wanted to go, and I've just never gone. I've gone to Europe, I just haven't gone to London. And right now, I just got off the phone. We're doing like 3 shows in London in December.
Really?
As long as everything finalizes, yeah.
That's amazing.
So that's like an exciting one for me.
So are you going on a tour, or are you just like they booked you out?
It's like a mini tour that, I'm calling it a tour. I haven't really fully publicly released the dates I'm available for it. I kind of just worked it throughout, like people that are connected that I know that want to do a show with me in Hanukkah and those that time. But when I release the dates that are left, I want it to be like it's a tour, because ultimately I'm going to various different places, and it is in a sense a tour. It's just not really like we meant for it to be that way.
I want to know, because like I want to post that on my social media when you're going to be out. I'm definitely going to be there to come and check you out. Would it be like a family friendly show? I mean, based on your music, it would be. I just mean in terms of times. Yeah,
it'll be family friendly. I mean, times are based on the days, really. Mm. So for one, Hanukkah type things, you want people to be there so that you could light the menorah with everyone. It's a huge, blessing to be able to gather people and do a menorah lighting. So if you're doing a Hanukkah show, you want it to be a respectable time for families. But then also if it's Saturday night, and it's Motzi Shabbos, you can't control how late that could be of a show. Mm. And then I guess depending on the location and the demographic that we're expecting, it is the times also. So, but it will be family friendly. Yeah.
When are you going to be back here in South Florida?
So can't speak yet, because one of the places that are trying to book me are for December.
Listen, I'm selfishly just trying to make plans, so I want to know a bit in advance. But like, I think that you threw some stuff at me that I never even thought I'd hear. So that's like, I'm a bit blown away by the hexture for music. Like I can't. That one's gonna sit with me for a while, because it seems to me such a rational, logical thing that isn't a thing. So I find that to be...
Yeah, I mean, the more steeped you are in like seeing how big of a thing this is in amongst the Jewish world, that like, okay, maybe there's a lot of people that are not super concerned, as long as it's like a Jewish artist. It follows like my protocol generally of like what he does. And obviously no inappropriate things in the music, which is like a no-brainer for me or like anyone making Jewish music.
Would you consider what you're making Jewish music?
So that's also the question. So I don't really try to define it. I try to make sure that it's things that I feel I could listen to and people can listen to. I want it to be somewhere in the middle, not like that.
Yeah, you're not trying just to attract. Your listeners aren't just Jews. Your listeners are people that like good music.
Yeah, it's all people all over the world, Jews and non-Jews, but as I create that, I also want anyone as religious as they are to feel like they can listen to it and also connect to it, God willing. So it's like a balance I'm trying to strike where I don't want people to feel like it's not Jewish music, even though it's it's its own thing and it's hard to define. But I also don't want to be only creating for the religious world and nowhere else. I want it to be things that connect to people all over the world. So it's kind of like its own thing. And that's why I think a hechsher for myself would be very useful because people get very concerned. And like I said, it's all based off he said, she said on what we listen to and what, it becomes like, and that's not really a way to do it. And I just want the most religious person in the world that feels like they can't listen to this, just to be able to feel like they can turn it on and feel comfortable. And
vibe with your music
yeah.
From, a teenager who's just listening to it.
Yeah. Because honestly, I've been very strict on my own intake of music for years, where, obviously I'm allowed, because I'm a musician and I make money through music, there's not even heter, it's allowed basically that I'm allowed to delve into music to learn and to discover and create as like a science in a sense. But, things that I listen to outside of that, and even if I am actively doing that ever, it's pretty, I listen to very religious music. I listen for a long period of time, all I'd listen to would be nigunim, like Hasidic melodies. And I would say even when I veer off from that, it's mainly out of part of that learning to, okay, this artist, I really like how he did this, and he's, and even then I'm pretty strict, and it's just going to still be religious music for me. It's just I'm listening to a different religious artist, and I'm trying to understand them. It's not all nigunim. It's not all the what I described nigunim. It's like wordless melodies.
Right. But before you became religious, who were your influences? Who were you listening to?
I don't even know if I want to say.
Well, if you're not comfortable saying, then don't.
It's just like everyone. All the big artists of the times like that I was, living in. I really liked alternative hip hop and how it was being created. Like I liked hearing hip hop with a more positive vibe and artsy and creative and out of the box. I felt that is where the type of music that I liked actually in the hip hop world was more like that. Not so much ghetto gangster rap was really my thing. But I also just studied all the artists that were big in especially hip hop, but outside, and I would say that I definitely geared to that aspect, the alternative hip hop, even back then, and also the oldies, 70s. Elton John, Billy Joel was like what my parents had us raised on, like wherever we go on trips, and I appreciated them, even if it wasn't our music, because we were the youth, It was like still something I connected to, and I delved deeply into those artists and those types of people when I was a teenager because I wanted to understand their creation, and I felt that they were creating music that was a lot different than our modern day music, where there's stories, there's things that are beyond just pop culture's nonsense sometimes, So I felt like there's a lot of depth to this oldies, and so even before I was like religious and I was more on a spiritual path, that was like something that I did. So it's all over. It's like a mosh pit of different artists. It's not even, I can't just say one. That would be shortchanging it.
If you had to put out there to say some people that you're really looking forward to collaborate in the future with your music, who would they be? Who might we catch you with?
So I definitely would love to. You mentioned Monticello earlier. He was, when I was becoming religious, I didn't have a lot of people that built that music that's somewhere in between. I'd love to make a song with him. I'd love to collaborate.
Did he mentor you at all? Did you talk to him? And because you did do.
I've had chances to pick his brain a little bit, but not much.
And what'd you find?
Very interesting ideas that have been very useful to learn about, and but I do hope more. I mean, he's a trailblazer, like you said, and someone that's walked a similar path in his own way, where you're balancing both worlds in music and creating music that balances both worlds. And
did he tell you what pitfalls to kind of avoid?
I didn't get that far into it. No, we haven't spoken enough for it to be into that. And then, I mean, other artists there's certain Jewish artists that are coming up that I really like. But outside of that, I think I like the idea of connecting with artists that are creating things that are spiritually inclined, and they may not be Jewish artists even.
You just did one with Julian Marley, right?
Yeah, that's an example.
Right.
I like that was super made sense to everyone that listened to it, even if it's veering off from certain things, because I'm a religious Jew, and people that listen to religious music, they might only want to hear religious Jewish artists or whatever. But I just felt it was very, much the type of creative expression that I enjoy. People that their worlds are around their own form of spirituality, and be able to create with them is unique. So there's definitely artists in that realm that I really appreciate, and I would love to do more similar things like that. And there's a few of them that have been in the pipeline that I'm trying to make manifest. Also, there's some Israeli artists that I'm working with. Avishai Cohen, he's a huge jazz artist, very big in Israel and France. And just like I love that he has like this unique melody to him, this unique vibe, and to be able to create, some form of spoken word poetry to that, it just seems very natural. I like these types of connections. I'm trying to be a creative, Do
you freestyle?
I used to.
But you don't anymore?
I don't. I found that freestyling is music I like being intentional with. Freestyling is not intentional unless it takes a lot of energy for it to be very intentional. And most people that are freestyling are just saying things to rhyme. And when you're just saying things to rhyme, you're not saying what you mean. And I'm a big believer in saying what you say matters. And I don't want to just say nonsense, and especially things that I shouldn't be saying, God forbid, just for the sake of trying to rhyme, and it sound cool or whatever. I don't believe in it anymore. That's how I came into a lot of music.
It's almost like the path, right?
Yeah, that was like a big part of my journey, was doing that with friends as a teen. Although
is there a big scene here, like a freestyle scene, battle, stuff like that?
It's just like something that my friends started doing. Like, it wasn't even, I don't know if there's a scene. It's something that we created, and people around us started becoming involved. And it does exist. There is somewhat of a scene, and you come across people that you could tell that they're doing that in their own circles, because they're very quick, and they're the wittiness and the whatnot and the wordplay is all very well done for someone that's just becoming things off the top of their head. But what we had was something that it was just because it was between us. That's what we were doing, and I believe that helped create the skill set very strongly, but it wasn't necessarily what I need to be doing today, Yeah,
it's definitely not the message, but I get the way you explained it. It's hard to be intentional and to say stuff with meaning when you're just trying to off the cuff say stuff. You got to make it flow, and you got to make it rhyme, got to make it entertaining, and you don't know what's going to come out if you're really thinking about it. So I get that. I totally get it, but I also recognize how challenging and how impressive it is for people to be able to freestyle to like random beats about random topics and stuff like that. It's like it's a super talent.
Yeah, I mean, I found it useful in music creation. Like the second verse of "You're Not Alone" was kind of freestyled. Uh, the first verse of "Yellow" was kind of freestyled, which was a song that's coming out, and that's because I'm in the studio and I want to get this section done, and it's new to me. Maybe I was working on something before, and nothing's written down. So why not?
So you
try
ever
to
just
freestyle
get into the
verse?
studio and just freestyle?
Sometimes, yeah.
Wow.
I find it useful actually for music creation because I feel like the creation of cadence through freestyle is much more fluid than writing. You're in the sound, like you're saying, being in the sound when you're performing. Before we started the show, when you're doing it, you have to get in the sound for it to sound good, and it forces you to be able to create something unique that sounds unique in that. Not always will you get the words right away, and that's geared by an idea that I'm speaking about. So it's not like the same as just freestyling for people that just want to hear me freestyle. It's like there's a point to this song. I already have the point. I'm trying to create a verse for this, and this is a good way to like start creation process.
Wow. It's really interesting though, your approach, but you don't only just take creativity. You have like meaning behind how you're gonna set this up, man. I am gonna be forever in your debt and grateful that you took the time to be down here with me.
So thankful to be here with you.
It is really like mind blowing and entertaining, but like you put something in my head that like I'm gonna get in the car and I'm gonna call my wife and I'm gonna say, oh my God, this is not bad, right? Because I don't like to talk about the podcast before they're formally released. I also am very careful about talking to people before the podcast because I don't want to prime a conversation. I want to get to know the authentic, real you.
Yeah, it's much more.
Yeah, otherwise it's like, we're plugging in what we're actually going to talk about well in advance, and that doesn't resonate well. That's not a conversation that people want to hear.
Yeah.
If you have to think about what you're going to say before you're going to say it, in that way, it's
take out my notes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not a podcast. That's not what my intentions are by any stretch of the imagination. My intention is to meet as many cool people as I can. I learn more from you than you will ever know. Everyone that sits across the chair from me has always given me so much insight about stuff that I had no business ever knowing. I get out there. This is a hobby and a craft that's grown into something that I really enjoy. I've said this before, but when I'm behind this mic, I kind of disappear. Where the whole world stops. I'm not on my phone. I'm not doing anything except paying attention to you. Looking at you, body language, eye contact. It's like what we should be doing as human beings and connecting a bit more. But we have to put a mic behind. And then hopefully somebody's listening to this and they're like, maybe somebody who's along the same path as you, who's religious, who's got the creative bone, doesn't know how to intertwine and mesh the two worlds. Now, if they wanted to get a hold of you, they could online. You never know when these things kind of go, right?
Yeah. I mean, I love connecting with people. That's a big. I think that's a big thing in our lives that we sometimes with phones, like you're saying, we've come to like not see the value in just speaking with people, being present. And then also like the beauty of a podcast is you're speaking to all these people that you may not have met, probably didn't. And some way you're connecting with them at the same time by being able to be present on that in this type of setting. And I'm really thankful that you brought me out. I think this is a beautiful session that we have, and hopefully people could utilize it in their lives in some way, shape, or form.
I want everyone to listen to your music. So where can they find you? How can they find you and connect with you?
Follow me on Spotify. That's where everything's going to be. You could find...
it's just Moshe Reuven.
Yeah.
I'm already subscribed.
Yeah, you could subscribe on YouTube as well. But the YouTube platform is going to be like its whole, project that we're going to be doing things more substantially later on. Right now, I'd say you're always going to be safe if you're following me on Spotify because you'll see all the music that's newly released. Nothing's going to be late. Nothing's going to be reshared by someone else, and it's all straight from me.
Sweet. Thank you so much, my man. I hope to stay in touch with you. And the fact that you took the time, like I said, I'm forever in your debt.
No, you're not in debt.
Take it easy, brother.
All right, take care.